I still remember the exact moment when my whole world collapsed. Not with a bang, but with a simple notification. A quiet, little ping from my husband's phone. While he was in the shower. I wasn't the type to check Marcus's phone. 17 years of marriage had built what I thought was unshakable trust, but that evening, something felt off. Marcus had been distant for months. Working late, weekend seminars, the sudden interest in his appearance, all the cliches. I refused to see his phone lit up on our bedroom dresser, a text preview from his assistant. Reservation confirmed at veranda for Friday, 8 p.m. She'll be thrilled with the private booth. I shouldn't have unlocked his phone. I knew that, but something primal took over. That instinct that tells you when your life is about to change forever. My fingers moved without my permission, typing in his passcode, our daughter's birth date. Ironically, what I found wasn't just a text about dinner plans. It was an entire secret life. Messages, photos, plans for their future. Her name was Bianca. She worked in his consulting firm's communications team, young, of course, beautiful, of course, and married too. I sat there clutching his phone, unable to breathe properly. The air in the room turned heavy, as though gravity itself had doubled. My heartbeat was loud in my ears, drowning out every logical thought. It wasn't just shock. It was the sting of recognition, the unraveling of certainty I had depended on for nearly 2 decades. My throat tightened, and I pressed my palm to my chest, as if I could physically contain the ache blooming inside me. 17 years of marriage, our lakefront house, our shared memories, our plans, all of it built on what now felt like quicksand. "Elena, have you seen my navy tie?" Marcus called from the bathroom, his voice so normal, so everyday, as if he hadn't been systematically destroying our marriage message by message. I placed his phone exactly where it had been, my hands trembling. "It's in the second drawer," I answered, amazed at how steady my voice sounded when inside I was screaming. That night, I lay beside him, listening to his peaceful breathing, fighting the urge to wake him up and demand answers. But something held me back. Pride, maybe, or perhaps a deeper instinct. One that whispered, there was a better way to handle this betrayal than a messy, emotional confrontation where he'd just lie anyway. The next morning, I kissed him goodbye like nothing had changed. "Good luck with your client pitch today," I said, knowing full well there was no pitch, just another day of lies. After he left, I called in sick to my job at the museum, where I taught political science. Then I did something I've never done before. I started investigating my own husband. It wasn't difficult. Marcus had grown careless, confident in my trust. His email password was the same as always. His calendar revealed everything, including the special dinner he'd planned for Friday night at Veranda, one of the most expensive restaurants in the city, a dinner that wasn't with a client, as he'd told me that morning. Then I found something else. Bianca's full name in an email thread. Bianca Russo. With a quick social media search, I found her striking husband, Daniel, who owned a flourishing design studio in the historic district. My first instinct was to call her husband immediately, but I stopped myself. A hysterical phone call would accomplish nothing, except give them all a chance to create more lies. No, this required something different, something they wouldn't expect. I remember sitting at our breakfast bar, staring at my tea growing cold, when the idea crystallized. If Marcus wanted a special dinner at Veranda, then that's exactly what he would get, with an unexpected twist. I found myself laughing, a hollow, strange sound that echoed in our empty kitchen. The same kitchen where Marcus had sworn his love and loyalty to me countless times, where we'd talked about traveling the world, where we'd made plans for a future that was now dissolving before my eyes. "You want dinner, Marcus," I whispered to myself. "I'll give you a dinner you'll never forget." That's when I picked up my phone and called Veranda. The maitre d' was exceptionally helpful. Yes, they had another table available on Friday night. Yes, it was possible to request a specific location, perhaps right next to the private booth already reserved under my husband's corporate account. A business dinner, I explained smoothly. The proximity would be perfect for potentially joining parties later. The maitre d' understood completely. Next, I needed to contact Daniel Russo without raising suspicions. Fortunately, being a political science professor had its advantages, including legitimate reasons to reach out to prominent professionals for campus events. I crafted a perfectly professional email about the university's civic leadership lecture series, mentioning that his fresh approach to sustainable urban design would be invaluable for our graduate students. And perhaps we could discuss the opportunity over dinner. I had a reservation at Veranda on Friday night. If that worked with his schedule, his response came within hours, polite, interested, and available. He had no idea that his wife would be at the same restaurant that night, cozied up with my husband in a private booth, just a table away. As I closed my laptop, I felt something shift inside me. The paralyzing shock was hardening into something else, something cold and clear and focused. For 17 years, I had been the perfect wife, supportive, understanding, patient. I had made excuses when he missed anniversaries, rationalized his absences as work stress, and convinced myself that emotional distance was just a phase. I had twisted my own perception, buried my suspicions beneath layers of loyalty, until there was nothing left but numb routine. I had built my life around our partnership, while Marcus apparently built a life around his deceptions. Friday night would change everything for all of us. The 3 days before Friday were the longest of my life. I moved through them like a ghost in my own home, watching Marcus with new eyes. How had I missed so much? The way he checked his phone when he thought I wasn't looking, the mysterious calls he took in another room, the subtle changes in his cologne and wardrobe, even the way he smiled, charming and confident, felt rehearsed now, like a mask I had never noticed before. I became hyper-aware of his presence, and yet more distant from him than ever. "I've got that client dinner Friday night," he mentioned casually over breakfast Thursday morning. "Don't wait up, these things always run late." I nodded, buttering my toast with steady hands. "That big corporate partnership, right?" "Exactly," he said, relief washing over his face at my easy acceptance. "Probably boring shop talk all night." "I might go out myself," I offered. "A colleague suggested we get together." Marcus barely registered my words, already absorbed in his phone. "That's nice, honey." 17 years of marriage, and he couldn't even pretend to be interested in my life for 30 seconds. Had it always been this way? Or had I been so dedicated to maintaining our perfect image that I'd edited out his indifference? That evening, I found myself standing in our walk-in closet, staring at my reflection. At 44, I was still attractive. My auburn hair showed only a few grays. My figure remained lean from years of early morning workouts. But I wasn't Bianca, with her 29 years and effortless beauty. I touched the fine lines around my eyes, wondering if this was why Marcus had strayed. No, I stopped that thought cold. This wasn't about me aging or any deficiency on my part. This was about Marcus's selfishness, his entitlement, his complete disregard for our vows. I dressed carefully for my business dinner, a navy blue sheath dress that was professional yet flattering. Pearl earrings Marcus had given me for our 12th anniversary, and the red-soled heels I rarely wore because Marcus once commented they made me look like I was trying too hard. I left work early to get my hair done. A subtle change, softer waves framing my face. The stylist commented on how calm I seemed. If she only knew the storm raging inside me. At home, I packed a small overnight bag and placed it in my car trunk. Whatever happened tonight, I wouldn't be sleeping under the same roof as Marcus. Then I drove to Veranda, arriving 30 minutes before my reservation. The maître d' recognized me from our phone conversation. With conspiratorial courtesy, he showed me the layout. My table positioned with perfect sightlines to the private booth where Marcus would be sitting with Bianca. From where they would be seated, they wouldn't immediately notice me unless they were scanning the room. "Your other party has already called to confirm. He's on his way," the maître d' informed me. I settled at the bar with a martini, watching the entrance like a hawk. Marcus arrived first, 15 minutes early, nervous energy evident in every movement. He looked handsome in his best suit, the one I'd helped him select for important presentations. He was escorted to the private booth. 10 minutes later, she arrived. Bianca was everything I expected and feared. Young, beautiful, confident. She wore a fitted red dress and moved with the assurance of someone who had never had to doubt her place in the world. My husband stood when she approached, his face transformed with an expression of pure adoration. One I hadn't seen directed at me in years. Something shattered inside me as I watched him take her hands, lean in for a lingering kiss. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the happiness on his face, the absolute contentment with her. He looked alive in a way he never did with me anymore. Elena Morgan? I turned to find Daniel Russo standing beside me, in his early 40s. He had the solid, dependable good looks of a man comfortable in his own skin. Dark hair with distinguished touches of gray at the temples, kind eyes, a genuine smile. "Mr. Russo," I managed, offering my hand, "thank you so much for agreeing to meet on such short notice. Please call me Daniel." His handshake was warm and firm. "And the pleasure is mine. Your proposal about the lecture series is intriguing." If he only knew. The matter day appeared to escort us to our table, the one with the perfect view of my husband and Daniel's wife, now cozily ensconced in their private booth, hands intertwined on the table. As we settled in, I tried to focus on Daniel, on maintaining the facade of a professional dinner, but my eyes kept drifting to the booth, where Marcus was now pouring champagne, leaning in to whisper something that made Bianca laugh with uninhibited joy. "So tell me about this executive series," Daniel said, unfolding his napkin. "The architecture-economics intersection is fascinating." I forced my attention back to him, launching into a well-rehearsed explanation about interdisciplinary education, all while my peripheral vision registered my husband's hand now resting on Bianca's bare knee under the table. "Elena?" Daniel's voice broke through my distraction. "Are you all right? You seem a bit—" "I'm fine," I said, reaching for my water glass. "Just a bit tired. End-of-term pressure." Daniel nodded sympathetically, then began telling me about his latest project, a sustainable apartment complex downtown. He was passionate, intelligent, completely unaware that his wife sat 20 feet away, now feeding my husband a bite of her appetizer. "I've been talking too much," he said with a self-deprecating smile. "Tell me about your work." As I began explaining my research focus, I noticed Bianca excuse herself from the table. Bathroom break. No doubt. This was my opportunity. "Would you excuse me for a moment?" I asked Daniel, who stood politely as I rose. I wasn't sure exactly what I planned to do, but my feet carried me directly into the path of Bianca as she returned from the ladies' room. The moment our eyes met, recognition flickered across her face. She had seen me in photos at Marcus's office, no doubt. "You're Marcus's wife," she said, her voice barely audible. "And you're Daniel's," I replied, tilting my head toward our table where Daniel sat with his back to us. The color drained from her perfect face. Looking back now, I realized I'd been preparing for that confrontation, since the moment I saw that text on Marcus's phone. But what happened next wasn't something I could have scripted. "Please," Bianca whispered, her eyes darting between me and the oblivious Daniel at our table. "Not here." "Why not? Here?" I asked, my voice remarkably steady. "Isn't this the perfect setting? The beautiful restaurant, the romantic lighting? You've clearly been enjoying it." Bianca's perfectly manicured hand reached out, grabbing my arm. "Elena, I can explain." "Can you?" I gently removed her hand. "Can you explain why you're having an affair with my husband? Can you explain why you're betraying that man over there who has no idea what's happening right now?" Her eyes welled with tears. "It's complicated. It always is, isn't it?" I smiled sadly. "Love, marriage, loyalty, such complicated concepts." My voice was calm, but inside, my chest burned. Each word I uttered tasted like metal, bitterness and truth fused together. I had rehearsed this confrontation in my head countless times, but nothing could prepare me for the reality of looking into her tearful, mascara-streaked face and realizing how real their betrayal was. She wasn't just a name in a message anymore. She was flesh and blood and remorse. And still, it wasn't enough. Behind Bianca, I could see Marcus had noticed our interaction. The color had drained from his face as he half rose from the booth, uncertain whether to approach or retreat. "What do you want?" Bianca asked, a tremor in her voice. That question caught me off guard. What did I want? Revenge? Justice? To hurt them as badly as they'd hurt me? Or maybe I wanted them to feel, for just one moment, the crushing helplessness I had carried since that first text. I wanted them to realize that their private fantasy wasn't invisible, that the people they had dismissed as collateral damage were standing right in front of them, alive, aware, and no longer blind. "I want honesty," I said finally. "Something that's been missing from my marriage for longer than I realized." I glanced back at Daniel, who was now looking our way with a puzzled expression. Your husband seems like a good man. Does he deserve this? Bianca's face crumpled. No, she whispered. He doesn't. Neither did I replied. At that moment, Marcus appeared behind Bianca, his face a mask of panic. Elena, what are you doing here? Having dinner, I said simply. Just like you. This isn't, he began. What it looks like, I finished for him. Marcus, please. We're well past that point. Daniel approached us then, confusion evident on his face. Elena, is everything okay? Do you know these people? The moment hung suspended in time. I could see Marcus silently pleading with me, Bianca frozen in terror. I had all the power in that moment, the power to create a scene, to expose them publicly, to watch their carefully constructed deception crumble spectacularly. But something else had been taking shape inside me during these past few days. A realization that the most devastating response wasn't a public meltdown. It was something altogether more controlled. Daniel, I said calmly, I'd like you to meet my husband, Marcus Morgan. The confusion on Daniel's face deepened, then his eyes shifted to Bianca, standing pale and trembling beside Marcus. And I believe you already know Bianca, I added softly. The comprehension that dawned on Daniel's face was heartbreaking to witness, confusion giving way to disbelief, then to a devastating understanding. Bianca. His voice cracked on her name. She couldn't meet his eyes. Daniel, How long? He asked, his voice hollow. No one answered. The silence was answer enough. It was a silence that spoke louder than any confession. It carried weight, years of trust now shattered in the space between heartbeats. Daniel's expression collapsed into something raw and defenseless, and watching it happen felt like reliving my own heartbreak all over again. I'd imagined this moment differently, expected satisfaction from their exposure, from watching their comfortable deception explode. Instead, I felt a profound sadness. Witnessing Daniel's pain was like watching my own reflected back at me. The vindication I thought I wanted was nowhere to be found. It had been replaced with a quiet, aching solidarity. We were both casualties of the same war, blindsided, unarmed, and bleeding in plain view. Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private, I suggested, conscious of the curious glances from nearby tables. Marcus found his voice then. Elena, listen, we need to talk about this. We certainly do, I agreed, but not here, and not just the two of us. The matter had approached, sensing the tension. Is everything all right with your dining experience? I smiled politely. Actually, we've had an unexpected change of plans. Could you possibly combine our reservations? It seems we need to have a 4-person conversation. The poor man looked between the 4 of us, professional enough not to react to the obvious tension. Of course, madam. Right this way. He led us to a private dining room, away from curious eyes, and quickly arranged a table for 4. I'll give you some time with the menus, he said, backing out and closing the door. We sat in painful silence. Marcus and Bianca on one side, Daniel and I on the other. The symbolic division wasn't lost on any of us. How did you know? Marcus finally asked me. Does it matter? I replied. I suppose not, he conceded. Daniel had yet to speak, his eyes fixed on his wife. Were you ever going to tell me? He finally asked her. Bianca's mascara had created dark trails down her cheeks. I don't know, she whispered. That's the problem with affairs, I said. They exist in a fantasy world where decisions never have to be made, where reality never intrudes, until it does. Marcus looked at me with something like surprise. You're being very calm about this. What did you expect, Marcus? That I'd throw a glass of wine in your face? Create a scene? Give you the moral high ground of calling me unstable or hysterical? He had the decency to look ashamed. I've had 3 days to process this. I continued, 3 days of looking back at our 17 years together, identifying all the moments you chose to lie instead of being honest with me. 3 days. Bianca's head snapped up. You've known for 3 days? And planned this? This ambush? I turned to her. Yes. And you know what the interesting part is? In those 3 days, neither of you noticed anything different. Marcus, you came home every night, kissed me on the cheek, asked about my day without listening to the answer. Just like always. You looked me in the eyes and told me about your client dinner tonight, without a flicker of guilt. My words weren't loud, but they carried weight. The kind of weight that only comes from years of silent disappointments layered one on top of the other, now finally given voice. The pain that laced through each sentence wasn't from the betrayal itself, but from the realization that I had been invisible for so long, and they hadn't even noticed. "I didn't want to hurt you," Marcus said weakly. Daniel laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "That's rich. You didn't want to hurt her while you were sleeping with my wife?" The waiter knocked and entered with water and bread, retreating quickly when he sensed the atmosphere. I'd planned this confrontation meticulously, reserved the table, invited Daniel, timed everything perfectly, but I hadn't anticipated how it would feel when the moment actually arrived. The crushing weight of all those lies. The reality that my marriage had been a facade longer than I wanted to admit. It was like waking from a long, hypnotic dream and realizing I had been alone in it. I felt a strange clarity amid the chaos, as if my soul, bruised and aching, had finally chosen itself. "What happens now?" Bianca asked, her voice small. I reached into my purse and pulled out a room key. "I've booked a room at the hotel across the street. For myself," I clarified. "I'm not sleeping in our bed tonight, Marcus." He looked stricken. "Elena?" "No," I cut him off. "I'm not finished. For 17 years, I've been the understanding wife, the supportive partner. I rearranged my career for your promotions. I forgave your absences. I believed every excuse. That ends tonight." My voice didn't crack. Not once, because this wasn't rage speaking, it was resolve. I had finally stopped asking why I wasn't enough, and started asking why he thought it was okay to take everything I gave and give nothing back. I placed the key on the table and stood up. "Daniel, I'm truly sorry about how you had to find out. You deserved better." Daniel nodded, still processing his new reality. "Marcus," I continued, "I'll be at my sister's for the weekend. When I come home Monday, I expect you to be gone. Take what you need for now. We can figure out the rest later." "You're throwing me out?" he asked incredulously. "No, Marcus. You threw yourself out the moment you decided our marriage vows were optional." I turned to Bianca. "He's all yours now. No more sneaking around. No more thrill of the forbidden. Just the reality of a man who betrays his commitments when they become inconvenient." With that, I walked toward the door, then paused with my hand on the handle. "Oh, and dinner's on Marcus's corporate card. You both seem to be familiar with the arrangement." I walked out of veranda. With my head held high, I passed my car in the valet line and crossed the street to the Grand Solace Hotel. Only when I reached my room, a luxury king with a view of the skyline I'd splurged on, did I finally allow myself to cry. Not delicate tears, not dignified weeping, but gut-wrenching, body-shaking sobs that seemed to come from some primordial place inside me. I cried for the marriage I thought I had, for the 17 years of memories now tainted, for the future I'd planned with a man who had been living a double life. The weight of every shared moment, every anniversary, every late-night laugh, every whispered plan for a retirement house by the coast, pressed against my chest like a stone. All of it stained now, all of it made suspect. I don't know how long I sat on the floor, back against the bed, letting out years of suppressed pain. It wasn't just tonight's betrayal I was mourning. It was every time I had chosen to trust, every time I'd pushed down that uneasy feeling and replaced it with belief in someone who didn't deserve it. Eventually, the storm passed, leaving me empty, but somehow clearer. A soft knock on the door startled me. I checked the peephole, expecting Marcus, ready to tell him to leave. Instead, I found Daniel Russo standing in the hallway, looking as shattered as I felt. I opened the door a crack. "Daniel? I'm sorry to intrude," he said, his voice rough from emotion. I couldn't go home. I didn't know where else to go." I hesitated, then opened the door wider. Professional boundaries seemed irrelevant after what we'd just experienced together. "How did you know where to find me?" I asked. "The hotel. You mentioned crossing the street," he shrugged. "There was only one possibility. I asked at reception if Elena Morgan had checked in." "They just told you?" "I might have implied I was your husband," he admitted. "Sorry. Under different circumstances, I might have been concerned. But tonight, we were just two people, united by the same betrayal. Two people carrying wounds too fresh to name, too raw to hide. In that moment, we weren't professor and architect, or husband and wife of someone else. We were simply human, wrecked and seeking shelter in each other's understanding. "Come in," I said. I'm afraid I look a mess. I gesture my tear-stained face. Join the club, he replied with a sad smile, his own eyes red-rimmed. We sat in the 2 armchairs by the window, looking out at the city lights in silence for a while. Did you know? He finally asked. Before the text, I mean. Did you suspect? I thought about it honestly. Part of me did. Marcus had changed, become distant, but I didn't want to see it. Daniel nodded. Bianca's been working late for months, taking weekend girls' trips. I trusted her completely. That's what makes it so effective, I said. They trade on our trust. What are you going to do now? He asked. I took a deep breath. Exactly what I said. I'm not taking him back just like that, after 17 years. The 17 years are exactly why, I explained. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a deliberate choice to betray everything we built. And from what I saw in his messages, it's been going on for almost a year. Daniel winced. A year? God, what about you? I asked gently. He ran his hands through his hair. I don't know. We've been married 7 years, no kids, thankfully. But still, you don't have to decide tonight. No, but I know I can't unsee what I saw, the way she looked at him. His voice broke. I reached out impulsively and took his hand, human connection in the midst of our shared pain. Around midnight, Daniel left for his own hotel room. We'd talked for hours, not just about our unfaithful spouses, but about our lives, our work, our dreams. 2 strangers finding unexpected connection through shared trauma. The next morning, I woke to frantic knocking. Marcus stood at my door, unshaven, still in last night's clothes. Elena, please, he begged. We need to talk. I let him in, maintaining careful distance. Did you come alone, or is Bianca waiting in the car? He flinched. That's over. I ended it last night. It was a mistake, the biggest mistake of my life. A year-long mistake, I noted. His eyes widened. You knew? How long? I saw everything, Marcus. The messages, the plans for weekend getaways disguised as business trips, the apartment you were looking at together. He collapsed into a chair. It wasn't real, what Bianca and I had. It was fantasy, not reality. And that makes it better? No, of course not. But Elena, 17 years of building a life together. You can't just throw that away. I didn't, I said quietly. You did, with every lie, every time you chose her over me. I'll do anything, he pleaded. Therapy, complete transparency, whatever you need. I studied the man I'd loved for so long, trying to reconcile him with the person who had systematically betrayed me. What's really changed, Marcus? You're not sorry you had the affair. You're sorry you got caught. That's not true, he insisted. I've been tortured by guilt. I was going to end it. When? I challenged. Before or after the trip to Napa you booked for next month? Before or after the apartment you put a deposit on? His face crumpled. How can I make this right? You can't, I said simply. Some things, once broken, can't be fixed. They can only be acknowledged and left behind. My voice was calm, but it came from a place deeper than anger, an exhaustion of the soul. I wasn't trying to punish him. I was simply done carrying the weight of his betrayal in silence. You're really done with me? Disbelief colored his voice. Just like that? No, Marcus, not just like that. After a year of you being done with me, while pretending otherwise. After discovering that the man I built my life around is capable of sustained, deliberate deception. Each word felt like another layer of skin being peeled back, raw, vulnerable, but also necessary. The truth had become a scalpel, precise and unflinching. He tried another approach. What about our friends, our families, the embarrassment of divorce? Embarrassment? I cut him off. That's what you're worried about? Your reputation? Our reputation, he corrected. We've built a life together. People respect us, look up to us. I laughed, a hollow sound. It echoed against the hotel walls like a ghost of the life I used to live, one built on carefully curated appearances and fragile illusions. Well, I've already taken care of that. I called your mother this morning. The color drained from his face. You didn't. I did. And your sister, and our friends, Anna and Greg. I told them exactly why I'm leaving you. You had no right, he exploded. No right to tell the truth? I countered. I spent years helping you build your perfect image, Marcus. I'm not going to be the villain in your story now. He stood abruptly. This isn't over. You're upset. You're not thinking clearly. Actually, I'm thinking clearly for the first time in years. The locks will be changed by Monday. Take what you need from the house this weekend. You can't just kick me out of my own home. Our home, I corrected. The one I designed, the one whose mortgage I've paid half of for 17 years. We can figure out the financial details later, but I'm not leaving. Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then quickly away. Is that Bianca? I asked. Missing you already? His silence was answer enough. Go, I said. She needs you more than I do right now. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't asking. I was releasing. I was letting go of someone who had already let go of me long ago. After he left, I sat alone in my hotel room, expecting to feel barren. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Like putting down a heavy burden I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. My phone rang. Daniel. I just wanted to check on you, he said when I answered. How are you holding up? Better than expected, I admitted. Marcus came by. Bianca's been calling non-stop. He said, I haven't answered. What will you do? He sighed. I think I've known the answer since last night. I deserve better than someone who can systematically lie to my face. Yes, I agreed. You do. Have you had breakfast? He asked suddenly. I could use a friendly face this morning. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, eyes puffy from crying, but clearer. Somehow unburdened. Breakfast sounds perfect, I said. The weeks that followed were a blur of lawyers, mediators, and painful divisions of a shared life. Marcus didn't go quietly, alternating between desperate pleas for reconciliation and bitter accusations that I was overreacting to one mistake. But I held firm, supported by a strength I hadn't known I possessed. Bianca moved away within a month, unable to face the social fallout in our interconnected community. According to mutual friends, Marcus tried to continue their relationship for a while, but the fantasy had crumbled under the weight of reality. Daniel and I continued to meet. First as emotional support through our parallel divorces, then as genuine friends. We understood each other's pain in ways no one else could. I never thanked you properly, Daniel said one evening, 6 months after that fateful dinner at Veranda. We were walking along the riverfront, the summer sunset painting the water gold. For what? For having the courage to expose the truth. For not looking the other way. I considered this. I didn't feel courageous at the time, just desperate. Whatever you felt, he said, you saved me from years of deception. If it weren't for you, I might still be living a lie. It was strange how life's most painful moments could lead to unexpected gifts. Through the dissolution of my marriage, I'd discovered my own resilience. I'd rebuilt my self-respect. I'd learned who my true friends were, the ones who stood by me without judgment. And I'd found Daniel, not as a replacement for what I'd lost, but as something entirely new and unexpected. Are you happy, Elena? He asked as we paused to watch a boat sail past. Not always, I answered honestly. Some days I still mourn what I thought I had, the future I planned. He nodded in understanding. But mostly, I continued, I'm grateful. For the truth, painful as it was. For the chance to rebuild on something real instead of comfortable illusions. To truth, then, he said, taking my hand gently in his. I thought about the Elena from a year ago, so certain of her place in the world, so blind to the reality of her marriage. I thought about the Elena who had sat in that hotel room sobbing, believing her life was over. You know what I learned from all this? I said. We're stronger than we think. When everything falls apart, we don't fall apart with it. Daniel squeezed my hand. No, we don't. 1 year after that night at Veranda, I ran into Marcus at a colleague's retirement party. He looked older, tired around the eyes. We exchanged awkward pleasantries before he pulled me aside. I never properly apologized, he said quietly. Not really. I was too busy trying to save myself. And now? I asked. Now, I know what I threw away, he said simply. And I'm sorry, Elena, truly sorry. I felt a surprising lack of bitterness. I hope you find happiness, Marcus. You seem to have found yours, he noted, glancing across the room where Daniel was chatting with some faculty members. I'm building something new, I corrected, day by day. Later, as Daniel and I walked home under a canopy of stars, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought us together. The pain that had to be endured, the facades that had to crumble. What are you thinking about? Daniel asked. How the worst night of my life somehow led me here, I replied. How sometimes we need to lose everything to find what we really need. He stopped walking and turned to face me, his eyes reflecting the streetlights. I'm glad you reserved that table next to theirs, he said with a small smile. So am I whispered. Sometimes betrayal isn't the end of your story. Sometimes it's just the painful beginning of a better one. So the story is over. Our wonderful friends, are you still here at this hour? If you're still with me, then something in this story must have touched your heart, stirred a memory, or echoed something you're going through right now. And if that's the case, let's take a moment, just you and me, to breathe in what this all really meant. You see, betrayal doesn't have to be the end of your story. Sometimes it's the truth peeling back the illusions we so carefully protect, so we can finally see what we truly deserve. Like Elena, many of us find ourselves staring at broken pieces of a life we thought was whole, and in those moments, it's tempting to believe we're broken too. But we're not. We're bending, yes. Shaking, maybe, but breaking? No, because here's the thing. The human spirit is designed to rebuild. As Rumi once wrote, the wound is the place where the light enters you. And it's true. From the pain comes clarity. From the heartbreak comes healing. From loss, the space to begin again, smarter, stronger, and more fiercely yourself than ever. Elena didn't just survive her betrayal, she transformed through it. She found strength she didn't know she had, drew boundaries, demanded truth, and allowed something new to grow, not to replace what was lost, but to stand on its own. And maybe you're there now, or maybe you're still hurting, still unsure. But hear this. Healing isn't about pretending you were never hurt. It's about choosing what to do with that pain. Do you carry it like a burden, or shape it into the foundation for your new life? So if this story resonated with you, let it be your reminder. You are allowed to start over. You are worthy of honesty, of kindness, of joy that doesn't come with conditions. If you felt something here, I'd love for you to like, share, and subscribe. Not just for the algorithm, but because maybe someone else out there needs this just as much as you did tonight. To truth, to strength, to second beginnings. Let's walk forward, together.